At this time, I'd like to introduce our presenting sponsor, Battelle, and ask Dr. Steve Ashby to join me on stage to say a few words and to introduce Congressman Dan Newhouse. Please help me welcome Dr. Ashby.
Well, thank you, Lori, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Battelle, which proudly operates the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory for the U.S. Department of Energy, it is our pleasure to serve as today's sponsor for the luncheon. And I'd like to thank the Tri-Cities Regional Chamber for providing this opportunity for us to come together and hear from Representative Dan Newhouse, who I will introduce shortly. The Chamber is an important community partner and advocate, and we appreciate the support and leadership it provides. Let's give Lori and her team a round of applause. I also appreciate the opportunity to provide a brief update on what's going on at the laboratory. And our campuses have been bustling with activity over the summer. Many of our 6,100 staff members are spending more time on site as part of PNNL's hybrid workplace to foster connection and innovation, which also means that more of our staff are commuting to and from the campus. And speaking of traffic, we have welcomed a steady stream of visitors and stakeholders to the laboratory, which allows us to showcase not just our research and its impacts, but also allows visitors from across the world to experience what we enjoy and often take too much for granted here in the Tri-Cities, as they get to see the community in which we live and for which we're so grateful to be a part of. And to give you a flavor of how busy we've been, let me just mention a few of these visits. So earlier this month, we provided program updates to Congressional staffers visiting as part of TRIDEC's annual visit. And Congressman Newhouse, we appreciated Dallas's and Chris's participation and engagement on your behalf. We also briefed members of the newly formed Washington State Legislative Nuclear Energy Caucus, co-led by our own Representative Stephanie Bernard. Thank you very much for your leadership. And telling her about PNNL's efforts to promote nuclear energy innovation. And we welcomed attendees from the Net Zero World Ministerial that Secretary Granholm hosted in Seattle last week. This meeting and the visit to PNNL highlighted how national laboratories are helping developing nations to chart their paths to a net zero emissions, clean energy future. And finally, just yesterday, we expanded the Clean Up to Clean Energy conversation that's going on in our community to include economic development by hosting a visit from the Washington State Department of Commerce. And this is just a portion of what's happened in August, and the month isn't even over yet. Meanwhile, we're continuing to make progress on our $1 billion decadal investment in the campus infrastructure. The grid storage launch pad, which will be the newest research facility on our Richland campus when it opens in 2024, is about 90% complete and will host collaborators from around the nation to accelerate innovation in energy storage technologies. We look forward to celebrating its completion, and I want to extend my appreciation to Congressman Newhouse and to the U.S. Congress for its funding of this project, and to Congressman Newhouse for his advocacy and vision for helping this become a reality. And we've also just recently begun work on a new 160-acre national security research complex north of Horn Rapids. So as you can see, a lot going on at the laboratory. But now it's my pleasure to introduce a great friend and leader in our region, Congressman Dan Newhouse, who represents Washington's 4th District. Congressman Newhouse is a long-time advocate for our state, previously serving 4 terms in the Washington State House of Representatives and as our Director of the State Department of Agriculture. As a 3rd-generation farmer and businessman in the Yakima Valley, Dan brings a deep-rooted, first-hand understanding of our area's issues and priorities to his work in Congress. And he does so effectively through his service on the House Committee on Appropriations, specifically the subcommittees on Energy and Water, Agriculture, and Homeland Security. Dan also serves on the House Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. These are important committee assignments that reflect both his influence and the respect he commands from his colleagues and House leadership. He also serves as chairman of the Congressional Western Caucus, whose more than 100 members across the U.S. are working to address rural policy issues in several important areas, including economic growth and energy security. Congressman Newhouse's strong support for our community is consistently evident in the work he does on our behalf in the House of Representatives to address the critical challenges facing all of us. He advocates for our veterans and farmers, supports the growth of our future workforce, and is a champion for key funding that enables P&L research and Hanford's cleanup missions. Congressman Newhouse's advocacy and hard work not only contribute to our community's growth, but also the nation's economic prosperity and security. So it's an honor to have him with us today. Please join me in a warm welcome to Congressman Dan Newhouse.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? Really? Have some coffee. That's that pot in the middle of the table. Everybody doing well, I hope. I know it's not as hot as it was, but it's still warm. It kind of slows the blood. But it's good to see everybody. Thank you for inviting me to be with you at this annual event. Lori, appreciate it, opportunity to give folks an update. So before I begin my remarks, unless we don't have to do it this year, there's a little bit of a game that Lori insists we play. And Elizabeth, who's disappeared, I think was behind. Oh, there she is, right back there. So, Jim Arneson, I'll let you take over and take it from here.
Well, don't run off, because you're a big part of this game. Okay. Part of the tradition when the good congressman comes to visit us is to play a little game of heads and tails. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask a series of questions. You will all be standing, and if you think the answer is true, put your hands on your head. If you think the answer is false, hands on your hips. If you are correct, you get to play the next round. If you're incorrect, you get to sit down. And we're going to play through that until we have a winner. And the winner is going to receive a $50 gift card from one of our new members, Ice Harbor Brewing Company. So, are we ready? Okay, can we have everyone stand? I know you're in the middle of eating, but this is going to be fun. Okay, are you ready for the first question? The first question is, what was the last movie Representative Newhouse saw? Heads, Oppenheimer. Tails, Barbie. Oh, look at that. Wow. What's the answer?
So up until this last weekend, it would have been Heads. But my wife's birthday, she wanted to, you can blame Joan, she wanted to go see Barbie, so I took her. That kind of thinned out the crowd, didn't it?
It did. Okay, for the 16 of you who are left, the next question is, what is his favorite ice cream flavor? Heads is chocolate. Tails is vanilla. Lock in your answers, please.
Ready? So I usually can't resist anything with cherry or some kind of huckleberry or those kind of things, but my true favorite flavor, I know this is boring, is vanilla. I know, right?
We're thinning them out fast.
No more surprises, I promise.
Okay. All right, so it has been hot, a little cooler today, but it's going to heat up again. On a hot day, is his preference lemonade for heads, or is it iced tea for tails?
So I'm a hop farmer, and that wasn't one of the choices, so we won't go there. But I love lemonade. I just have to be honest that. Lemonade. That one wasn't so.
We have a few rounds.
There's 20 or so out there.
Okay, so for those of you who are left, why don't you come to the front so we can really get a good eye on the next couple of questions. So come on up to the front. Okay, looks like we're all ready to play. The next question is about peanut butter. Everybody has the preference. What is Dan's? Crunchy for heads, creamy for tails.
I think creamy's for using to bait mousetraps. Crunchy is the only peanut butter that I eat.
Okay, getting down to it. Now here's another one. I don't know if this is going to be a hard one or an easy one, but the most recent concert he attended was either Heads, Shania Twain, or Tails, Garth Brooks.
Miss Twain came to Seattle here a couple months ago, and so we had to go see her.
Okay, we're down to just a handful now. Guilty pleasure TV shows. Heads for The Sopranos. Tails for Breaking Bad.
Everybody decided? Okay. I hate to admit this, and probably nobody else in the room loved Breaking Bad, right? It's an awesome show. Very dark.
Okay, Breaking Bad it is. Okay, we're down to it. Similar to the peanut butter question, we're on chocolate this time. Milk chocolate for heads, dark chocolate for tails.
So the answer's got to be, I think they're done. Dark chocolate. That's my favorite. Down to 2.
Okay, now we're in the category of wine. Heads is white, tails is red.
So I used to love red, but it doesn't love me so much anymore. So I prefer white today.
Okay, I have a card for you.
Don't have to flip a coin or anything.
I'm sorry. I got it backwards.
Thank you, Jim. Are you done?
I am all done. All yours.
All mine. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good job. Well, now you know a little bit more about me, whether you wanted to or not, but that's always fun to do. Thank you, guys. Like I said, I appreciate very much the opportunity to come and give you a little bit of an update. Can you hear me okay? This thing doesn't adjust very well. I don't want to break it. An update on what's going on in Washington, D.C. I'll tell you all the good things. Okay, I'm done right now. Anybody that watches current events knows that Washington, D.C. is, how would you describe it? Anybody throw me out something? Well, what? Dysfunctional. Well, that's good. Anybody else? Oh, no one wants to swear today, I guess, right? It's been, I guess dysfunctional is one adjective that could fit. From a distance, I'm sure that's exactly what it looks like, and sometimes up close too. But I got to tell you, our founding fathers put together a very unique system on this planet, one that has worked well for us for a long, long time. And it wasn't meant to be easy. It wasn't meant to be easy to pass laws that you have to live under. And honestly, I don't think it was truly meant to be pretty either. It's probably the largest debate club in the country, where diverging different ideas are put together, stirred up, and we come out with something that hopefully the majority of people can agree to. And that's not always a pleasant thing to watch. Some people compare it to sausage making. You've probably heard that before. And that's not the most pleasant thing to watch. But we usually like the product. And that's, I think, what's happening in Washington, D.C. You've known me well enough, it wasn't one of the questions, but I'm an optimistic person. I'm a farmer. You have to be an optimistic person to be in agriculture, particularly today. And I think that has been a good thing for me to be that way in Washington, D.C. Sometimes it can look pretty futile and hopeless. In fact, I'm here on our August break. Anybody that's been to Washington, D.C. in August knows that it's not really a place that you really want to spend much time. It's hot, which we're used to, but it's also very, very humid. The city was built in a swamp, and you can put up all the buildings you want, it's still a swamp. So it's not the most comfortable place. But when we get back on September 12th, we have, I think, 12 legislative days to get a lot of things done. We have to pass, theoretically, 12 appropriation bills. The House has passed one off the floor. The Senate has yet to pass any of theirs, although they've gotten all of theirs out of committee. We've only gotten 10 out of the 12 out of committee, so we've got that step to take as well. We also have the FAA reauthorization has to be passed by the end of September. The Farm Bill, a very important piece of legislation in the agricultural industry, that also expires by the end of September. So a lot of things to do in 12 days. And, you know, sometimes it takes Congress longer to decide what to name a post office than 12 days. So that's, you know, optimistically speaking, probably a little more than we're going to get accomplished. My guess is, and most members of leadership are saying now, that a continuing resolution, at least a short-term one, is likely to be where we end up. And that's not going to be easy either. So what's next? You've heard the term of government shutdown. That's also a possibility. I used to say, well, nobody wants a shutdown, but I'm not sure that's actually true anymore. Some people are okay with shutting the government down in order to make their policy points, their political points. To me, that's not a good option, and I think that again, being optimistic, not naive, but I think there's plenty of us in Congress that also don't want to see a government shutdown, that we will get to that fiscal cliff and get something passed. That's my hope. So lots to do in the short amount of time when we return next month. But let me talk about some of the things that are going on otherwise. I mentioned some of them. Dr. Ashby mentioned one that I was going to bring up as well. I'm part of what is called the Select Committee on China. It had a much longer name that I think you used, but everybody has shortened it. And that was put together in response to some of the true challenges that we're seeing from the People's Republic of China. You know of many of them. Militarily speaking, China is on track to have, I think their goal by 2025 is to have 400 naval ships. The spending that they're putting forth on building up their military is huge. They have strategic plans in mind to become the dominant force in the world, overtaking the United States. So that's one of our challenges. Economically speaking, they're still the second largest economy in the world. Obviously have also huge goals of overtaking the United States in that as well. And they're doing that working towards that in so many different ways. One of the things is the theft of technology that we have seen taking place, the billions of dollars that China helps themselves to, not just from the United States, but from countries all over the world. So we're seeing a lot of challenges, and it was, I think, I'll say past time, but certainly time for the United States to recognize, step up, and learn what those challenges are so that so that we have a response, that we can continue to strategically as well be able to compete with the PRC and be able to compete successfully. And so that's why the committee was formed. We've had several eye-opening hearings, learning about some of these challenges specifically. Some of them are in situations where I can't reveal all of the information that I've heard, but just let me tell you that the advances that China is making militarily as they look across the China Sea to Taiwan is hair-raising. And I would characterize China as being the largest existential threat that we face. And so this select committee has a huge job to do to come up with a path forward on how we can continue to compete successfully. Some people are calling for the total, I can't think of the term right off the top of my head, but removing ourselves from trading with China completely. The two largest economies in the world, I think we will have a hard time operating in a vacuum or in a bubble, separate from each other. So how do we disengage from China smartly? One thing we learned, if there's any bright spots to the recent pandemic that we went through, we learned that we were way too dependent on other countries for many important things. At the top of that list, I think, is the People's Republic of China. I would wager that almost, well, not everybody, I'm sure, but I'm sure many of the pieces of clothing that I'm wearing today came from China. And I would guess that that's true for a lot of us in the room. But we found that so many things that we need in our everyday lives come from China. So we depend on them in ways, and they depend on us. They're one of our largest agricultural trading partners. So farmers in this country depend on exporting huge amounts of agricultural products to China. They've been a great market over the years. It's just diminished some lately. So lots of things that we have to figure out on how to respond to these challenges, how to be smart about them so that we can continue to be successful on into the future. And I would say as well, to protect the democratic system of government that we all enjoy and the freedoms that we have. We don't want China to be ruling the world. And I think that, we have some things that we have to overcome in this effort. The United States thinks in short terms. The next election's always just 2 years or less away for members of Congress, 6 years or less away for members of the Senate, 4 years or less. And how long do our campaigns last for president? At least 2 years, but they're always 4 years or less away. We think very short term. China has 10, 20, 50-year plans. And we've got to be more strategic ourselves. So that's one thing that we are working on in Congress today that I wanted to fill you in a little bit on. A couple other things, and when I get to the end, I'm going to ask you for questions as well, so that hopefully we'll have time for that. A couple of things that, well, first let me talk about the Farm Bill. Being a farmer, a lot of folks in the room, I think, understand the importance of agriculture, not only in central Washington, but throughout our country. The ability for us to be able to not only feed ourselves, but many people around the world it's not only a food security thing, but it's an issue of national security. And so passing a farm bill every 5 years is vital for our agricultural industry to be able to continue to be successful, to stay on the cutting edge of technology so that we can continue to be able to feed all the people that we do. And as you probably know, there's a lot of challenges in farm country today. And passing the farm bill, again, is necessary. Coming up, it like I said, expires September 30th. My guess is, with all the other things, we're going to have a short-term extension. The chairman of the committee is a gentleman by the name of G.T. Thompson. He's been to the Tri-Cities on a couple of occasions. I've invited him to come to Central Washington. And he's been traveling the country holding listening sessions, listening to groups of farmers and producers, agricultural folks, to make sure that the priorities that American agriculture need are included in the Farm Bill. But maybe you knew this and maybe you didn't. About 80% of the almost $1 trillion that are included, worth of programs that are included in the Farm Bill, go towards some of the food programs that we have, which is essential for a huge part of our population. There's a big interest in Congress to make sure we're as efficient as possible in administering these food programs, to make sure that those dollars get to the people that need the help, make sure that there's not people taking advantage of the system that shouldn't be, being, like I said, efficient. My guess is that that's going to be one of those things that causes us to stumble in getting a farm bill passed quickly. We should be able to have it done by the end of September, but there are a number of people that want to cut and cut and cut the farm bill to levels that is going to be that will be unacceptable to, I think, the majority of Congress. So you're going to be hearing a lot of discussion about that and debate. Part of that, what I was talking about earlier, things aren't always so pretty to watch when it comes to Congress. But I think in the end, we will make some efficiencies. We will make some necessary changes and pass on a bipartisan basis a farm bill for the next 5 years. A couple things that are closer to home that I wanted to touch on. First of all, the lower Snake River dams are an issue that continues to keep coming up. The call for breaching the Snake River dams today is louder than ever. And I want to thank a lot of people in this room for being part of the side that pushes back on the arguments to breach the lower Snake River dams. Those 4 dams have allowed Central Washington to prosper to what it is today. As you all know, they provide us clean, renewable, carbon-free energy. They provide us a transportation system that allows us to move freight up and down the river system that makes Lewiston, Idaho, a seaport. They provide us the ability to irrigate thousands of acres in Central Washington, again, helping us to feed the world, literally. And today, when I was just in California recently, seeing that thousands of acres that are idle because they don't have an adequate water supply, the Columbia Basin is becoming even more vital than ever to be able to meet the needs of a growing population. There is a problem, as you know, the conflict between the dams and the ability for salmon to do their thing, to be able to migrate up and down the river. My take is on this that we can do both. We can enjoy the benefits of the dams while also providing mitigation to allow the salmon to flourish in the same system. We've got some work to do there, but we've made tremendous progress. And with the runs that we're seeing increasing on an annual basis, I think that if we look at improving the passage of salmon through the dams, which we're investing a lot, as well as looking at other factors that impact salmon survivability, like habitat, like the ocean conditions, like predators that feed on salmon smolts. All of those factors are an impact. It's not just the dams that are impacting the salmon. So thank you for being a loud voice and standing up for the dams. I think that this is something that will continue on for a long time, and I will continue to fight back on those that want to remove the dams. Another issue that, this is a hard one because it's not only do we face here in Central Washington in a big way, but we face around the country, and that's the issue of fentanyl. The illegal, illicit drug that is killing so many Americans. just last year, and I hate to use a lot of statistics, but these are pretty eye-opening. Just last year, over 100,000 people in the United States died of drug overdoses. The lion's share of those drug overdoses had to do with fentanyl. I'm told that if there were 23 people that died from a drug overdose, 20 of them would have been one reason or another attributed to the use of fentanyl. And sometimes it's not even something that people know they're ingesting. It's a tremendous problem in large cities, but also in small rural communities. I don't have the answer, but one thing that we're doing, we put together a fentanyl task force recently with the goal of finding what the answer or those answers might be. We brought together experts on almost every facet of the complex issue, from law enforcement to the treatment, people that are involved in the treatment part of it, to people that are working with young children to prevent them from getting involved in drugs in the first place. All of the different areas that we need to hear from. So I don't have we're not done yet, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to come to you with answers on what we can do as a community, but also as a country with this crisis that we're seeing. I think that this is the only effort going on in the whole country. If there are others happening, we're keeping our ears and eyes open to see if there are, so that we can learn from them ourselves, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel and be able to share information back and forth. But this truly is one of the biggest threats that we face. And it, interestingly, ties back to China. Most of the precursors for fentanyl come from China, even though they deny this, into Mexico, manufactured into the final form, and come into the United States at our southern border. So lots of work to do there to prevent all of that from ruining people's lives, literally, and communities in this country. So, as I said, this is August break. I've had a couple weeks home already, got a couple more. We're picking hops here soon, and so that's my vacation every year, is to help my son on the farm. But it also gives me an opportunity to get around and visit with people throughout the district, which, as you know, is a huge district. It goes from Canada to Oregon, 8 counties, and a lot of rural communities, a lot of different kinds of issues. And you know what I'm hearing from people? A lot of anxiousness, I guess, an unsettled feeling about what's going on in our country and what the future looks like for themselves or for their kids. We see high inflation, although maybe that's coming down a little bit, but still the impacts of inflation have been tremendous. We see high interest rates. We see the lack of ability of young people to be able to buy a home. In fact, I've just read that building of affordable housing on the West Coast has virtually stopped. People aren't buying because they can't afford to with the interest rates as they are. And people aren't wanting to sell existing homes because they don't want to lose the good interest rate that they have in their current mortgage. I mean, there's just a lot of factors to that. And I don't think the West Coast is different than any other part of the country either. People are looking at high prices every time they go to the grocery store. I can't believe, I have sticker shock every time I go to Safeway. And then they're also looking at the high price of the gasoline they put in the tank just to get to the store, and then let alone get home, which is a huge issue in the state of Washington. In fact, you guys will be happy to hear about this. We finally beat California at something. We're number 1 when it comes to gas prices. Yeah, I think we're trading places over the last couple of weeks, back and forth, but friends of mine from California have been sending me texts laughing about that. Join the crowd, they said. Join the And a lot of reasons for that, certainly. But the taxes that, I won't pick on our state legislators here because I'm sure they were not in favor, but the taxes that have been imposed on Washingtonians to drive us, sorry for that pun, but drive us away from internal combustion engines by raising the price of gas artificially. It's putting our rural communities particularly at risk, raising the cost of all the goods that we buy, impacting inflation, impacting our ability to provide for our families. So I hear a lot of that kind of feeling from people. Asking me if there's hope. How do we move forward from this? How do we provide the ability for the American citizens to live the American dream? You know, as I mentioned, I was in California recently, and one of the things I've always wanted to do, and so my wife and I had to drive about 3 hours out of our way to do this. And I know this isn't a political event, don't want to make it that, but every American, I think, particularly every Republican, but every American should go to the Reagan Library. We were able to do that, and it was tremendous. Of course, I remember President Reagan very well when I was a lot younger, but it helped remind me, I think, of the hope that the United States of America stands for and the potential that we have if we allow people, don't guarantee people this, but allow people the opportunity to pursue their American dream. We can't guarantee success, but we can offer the opportunity and put those things in place to allow people to be successful. Ronald Reagan believed in people. He believed in hope. He believed the United States was that city on the hill, that shining city on the hill. And I believe in that too. And I think it was a good reminder that a lot of people on both sides of the aisle would benefit from being reminded of. But we do have a lot of challenges in this country. We absolutely do. Someone asked me today, I think it was Justin, if we still in Congress have the bipartisan working group where we bring Republicans and Democrats together to try to find common ground so that we can work on solutions together. And we do. It is active. It meets on a weekly basis. And I'm very proud of the fact that because of Derek Kilmer and I being here in the Tri-Cities a few years ago talking about that a group right here in the Tri-Cities formed and I believe continues to this day, which I think that's our way forward. I think we need to get out of our respective corners and start listening to people on the other side of that imaginary aisle. I think in that way that the United States of America can move forward in a positive way, in a good way. And so I have hope. I continue to believe that this is the best country in the world, that the opportunities that we have here are tremendous. Gosh, just look at how many people want to keep coming here, right? The southern border wouldn't be in the crisis situation if we were a terrible place to live. This is one of the best places on the planet. And we need to work hard to keep it that way. And let me just say, I am honored and privileged to be able to represent you in Washington, D.C. and work as hard as I can on your behalf so that we continue to have the opportunities that were given to us by our forefathers. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about a few of the things that we're looking at today in Congress. I'm going to be here, like I said, till the 12th of September. So I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in that period of time. But with that, I promised, and I don't know what the clock says, but I promised that there'd be an opportunity for some questions. So Elizabeth, you've got a microphone if you'd like to keep an eye out for any hands. If anybody has anything they'd like to bring up, I'd be happy to try to answer. But thank you very much for having me today. Going once? Oh,
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman, for your remarks and the information. My name is Jim Milbauer. I was curious, you mentioned the fentanyl crisis with substance use disorder, drug overdose, addiction. Are you familiar with or had an opportunity to tour the newly named Columbia Valley Center for Recovery here in the Tri-Cities? And if not, if you have some spare time, I know you're busy.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate if you'd be able to come down and tour the facilities.
No, thank you for that, Jim. I have not, and I would love to, because I think that's exactly what we have to. We have to address this issue on several different fronts. We can't turn our back on people that are pulled in by the scourge of drugs. I don't think that's the best option. We should help them get back on their feet. So absolutely, I'd love to accept that invitation and be able to see that firsthand. That's been in the works for a long time, so I'm glad to see it finally come to fruition, and looking forward to be able to help in that effort as much as possible. But thank you, Jim. Appreciate that.
Thanks for giving the opportunity for questions. I'm Tony Umek, small business and previously involved with the chamber and retired and enjoying it. The reason that I wanted to ask a question had to do specifically with energy, and I don't expect that you're going to be able to give us a lot of information, but one of the comments you made was the strategic thinking that we should probably be following to be competitive in the world. And I have not seen, and if it's there, I haven't seen it, Congressman, any sort of strategic framework for energy independence.
Yeah.
We're working on windmills and solar, which, with all due respect, the nameplate of 1,100 megawatts assumes the wind's going to blow 24 hours a day, which it doesn't do. So the real truth is it's probably 300 megawatts out of 1,100, whereas if we built a power plant, we would be getting that 24 hours a day. So the question would be, what are we doing about that? And appreciate the opportunity for the question.
Thank you so much for bringing that. One of the pitfalls of not ever looking at your notes is you forget to say a few things. And I wanted to address particularly what's going on the Hanford Reservation and not only the cleanup efforts, and Brian, welcome to the beautiful Tri-Cities, but the tremendous progress that's being made at the the vitrification plant. The melter, I'm told, is up to 2,100 degrees, and it'll stay there for its duration, right? So huge steps are being made in the cleanup at Hanford, so thank you for that. But the energy issue, energy independence, and I think of the partnership that we're moving forward with, Energy Northwest and X Energy, the SMRs that are planned here in Richland. I think that's the kind of a thing that we need to embrace moving forward in different parts of the country. And the exciting thing is that this will be the hub for small modular reactors. So I've always thought that's a glimpse into our future. As we move out of the cleanup phase, what are we going to do with all these tremendously talented people that we have in the Tri-Cities? And this is one area that we will excel in. So the other thing, and this is a conundrum that we're in as a country. Everybody wants to move to a carbon-free future. And that may be the best thing for us, and we'll probably get there at some point. But the problem is, we can't flip a switch and all of a sudden tomorrow we only utilize those sources of energy that are carbon-free. That transition is not going to happen that fast. We can force it, we can try, and when government, anytime government determines what the market should be responding to, it usually makes the wrong choice. I believe in the free market, and I think that people are very clever, will come up with those ways of us to be able to be energy independent again. Part of that, though, even though we're seeing record temperatures around the globe, we will continue, in our future energy portfolio, continue to have fossil fuels for the foreseeable future. In fact, I would make the prediction that the lifetime of everybody in this room, we will still be using oil and gas in some form or another. Over time, that's going to be change, diminish from one energy sources to others. But we need to be able to utilize those resources that this economy demands, and we have them right here in our country. We are able to produce oil and gas in the United States cleaner, more environmentally cognizant than any other place on the planet. So instead of buying from the Saudis or from Venezuela or from Russia, we should utilize those resources that we have in this country. Do it smart, continue to bring forward those ideas that reduce carbon, recapture carbon, and provide also those energy sources that are alternatives. But I agree with you. I think the point you're making, if we want to depend solely on wind and solar, remove all of those other things that either produce carbon or impede salmon migration, the entire Northwest will be covered with solar farms and windmills. And I don't think that's what we're going to be wanting to look at every day. Some of this land we're going to need to continue producing food on, and not just electricity. So we've got to be smart about how we move forward, and I think that there's enough alternatives out there, and things maybe that we haven't even thought of yet. There are at least 2 hydrogen projects in central Washington right now. So there's a lot of options out there available to us. So Elizabeth, I think you said that was all the time we have. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon, and look forward to seeing you soon.